Thanks, Sebastian. Thanks for putting on such an event, and also for inviting me and finally convincing me to come. It wasn't because I didn't want to come, but I've been a bit busy in the last couple of years building the business. So, not that one. So for the next 20 minutes, I just want to talk a little bit about a new model of capitalism. I want to talk about the advantages of artificial intelligence. I want to talk about, finally, about death. So I thought it was quite a lot of ground to cover in 20 minutes, so just sit tight. If you've had your coffee already, you should be okay, but I'll try and get through this clip. If that was a Match.com profile, that guy wouldn't get a date. And I know that for a fact. I always forget how bad that picture looks at scale, by the way, whenever I put that up. But I showed this picture to my daughter a couple of years ago. It was mocked up by someone in our business, and the only thing she could say to me was, "Wasn't you cold without your top on, Dad?" Which is nothing about the bear whatsoever. But yeah, I used to run Match.com. Before I was at Simply Business, I used to run Match.com throughout Europe. I've been involved with a couple of other businesses over the last 22 years in the internet sector. So I was early on at lastminute.com. We eventually got bought by Travelocity. I then went to launch Match. And then I was on the board and an investor in Skyscanner as well. So, and just to show that everything I've done has been a success, I was one of the founding trustees for the Drink Aware Trust as well. You might be aware of that. It's the thing on bottles trying to promote responsible drinking. And I actually resigned after 3 years because I was drinking more than when I started. That's a true story, unfortunately. So not everything I've done has been a mitigated success. And then for 8.5 years ago, I took a call from an investor about joining the insurance industry. And like many of you, I imagine, the first reaction to that was, really, insurance? And I started to think about it, having done travel and dating and being an investor. And actually, the more I thought about it, the more obvious it was that, to be in a market where technology hadn't really played out 8.5 years ago. There were no real technology players, I thought. Certainly no one that was thinking about advanced analytics in particular. And also there wasn't really anyone when I met and started doing my diligence that thought of technology as anything but a cost line as well. So, and really, let's be honest about it, it's a product that customers don't want, they don't understand, they don't believe it's going to work. So from a challenge point of view, I thought it was a really interesting opportunity and got stuck in 8.5 years ago. And I had no idea, to be honest with you. Anyone that tells you that they knew about fintech was going to come around is either lying or delusional. I hope I'm neither. But the idea that we built a technology business and then, we've ridden the wave of fintech that you're all enjoying now. But the other thing about it is we wanted to build a business that I wanted to work in. And I know that sounds quite trite, but I wanted to be a really values-led business that was less about shareholder value in its entirety. Shareholders are important. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But actually, we think about stakeholder management, where shareholders, employees and customers, society, the environment all have equal standing in our business. And then again, that's true to our core, and that's partly what I wanted to talk about today. And we've had a bit of success. Hopefully you've seen some of this, but we not only have we had economic success, the business now is 500,000 customers, 17 million in premium this year. We've launched in the US recently, but we also sold to Travellers last year for half a unicorn. Someone asked me which half of the unicorn, by the way. The interesting stuff's all of the fun of a unicorn, isn't it? So it has to be the fun half. But $500 million isn't bad. But the things we're most proud of is actually the way that we built the business, and that's been recognised by, we won the Sunday Times Best Place to Work 2 years on the trot. And then when we didn't enter in 2017, we became accredited as a B Corp as well. So one of the reasons for being here, and one of the reasons rather mercenary I said yes today, is that I've just written a book. And by the way, you've got a copy of the book, so if you want to snooze for 15 minutes now or go and do your emails, that's also fine. It's all in there. Or I can save you a couple of hours reading by just listening for a few minutes. But the reason I wrote a book was not a pure vanity project, although there's obviously a bit of that in there. But there were a couple of signals that I've really been worried by in the last few years. And the main ones were, you might have seen a report last year by 2 Oxford academics called Frey and Osborne, who predict that 47% of jobs are going to go away due to artificial intelligence and machine learning in the next 30 years. And that may or may not be true. But as someone who's been in the technology business for the best part of 25 years now, what's lacking in that narrative is how that technology can benefit humanity at large. And so part of this was, I wanted to try and bring that debate into the fore around how this can help the technological progress of humanity in general, rather than just, if it's one of those 47% of jobs, unlucky. It also didn't marry with my experience as well. So I went to a thing called Singularity University that some of you may know about 6 years ago now. So there's a few nods in there. And Singularity University, it's like, it's the high priests of high tech, basically, where you go over to Silicon Valley and you talk about robotics, genetics, AI. And the guy that founded it is a guy called Ray Kurzweil, who wrote an amazing but very long book called The Singularity is Near. Ray thinks that we're going to upload upload our minds into the matrix in 20 years and humanity will just be a footnote. Well, I went to meet Ray and he did this presentation for 20 of us. And he came out, he trotted out onto stage and he put his laptop in and he couldn't get PowerPoint to work. And I looked around the room to see if anyone else could see the irony in it. The guy that thinks that humanity will be a footnote had to get a 20-year-old AV guy out to plug his laptop in. So again, I just think there's a bit of hubris in the arguments around technology that we need to ground in how do we all fight for Team Human and how do we think about the benefits of technology being shared more broadly. The second reason is I wanted to tell the Simply Business story. We're by no means perfect, it's a work in progress, but we've had some success, and I think the framework of experimental design, the way that we think about organisation, the way we think about the future, might be helpful to people as they navigate these areas. And the final reason for writing it is that, you know, I've got two young kids, 9 and 6-year-old, and I'm trying to think about their relationship with technology. Like many people in technology, I didn't allow my kids on technology until they were 5. And because I think, you know, we're starting to see now some of the problems with technology, the addictive nature of mobiles, you know, the always on, the way they've been designed. I think there's going to be correction in the next 10 years to that. And so really it was about how my kids can get the benefit of technology, whilst at the same time, you know, not being part of that culture which sees people sitting for 10 hours, weeing themselves playing Fortnite. Not my kids, by the way. That was a true story out of the Daily Mail. So the thing I want to talk about today, that's an oxymoron, isn't it? So I just realised. Anyway, so just quickly, I wanted to run through 5-ish lessons from Simply Business about how we think about leadership. And again, I go into some detail in the book, but I just wanted to give you a taste of this. And my thesis is that, you know, the world is accelerating. We're living with advanced technologies. It's incredibly complex. It's at a pace that we've never recognised through human history. And so the methods of leadership need to change. And again, we've got no monopoly on the truth at how we're looking, but I want to create a debate to see if people could engage rather than hierarchical top-down leadership. So as a backdrop to that, you know, leadership, like political systems, have to deliver prosperity and progress to their organisations. So if you think about capitalism for the last, 50 years, particularly since Second World War, we've risen all tides. People have got wealthier, people have better health outcomes, there's better gender diversity, and we're by no means finished, but the world is getting better. And that's largely down to these two old white men, Milton Friedman there with the glasses, who was the father of neoliberal economics in the 50s. And really, the way that we've driven our economy through the last 50 years is down to the Chicago School of Thought, which thinks about free markets and thinks about the way that capital should be distributed. His famous quote in the 70s in the New York Times was that there's only one purpose of a business, and that's for profit, which I wholly disagree with now. I think it was relevant for the time. The second guy is Frederick Winslow Taylor, and Taylor was really the father of the management science, the guy that looks at businesses to be optimized at the turn of the 18th and 19th century, sees people as commodities and cogs in that wheel, and the systems have to be standardized and through a process of forced cooperation. And so you can see what we know about people now and the way the free markets worked out, the way that standardization has worked out. I think that's got us so far, but I think there's time, again, for a reboot. And obviously this came to a head in 2008, and we all know we're living through the consequences of that now. A lot of those outcomes that have been rising for the last 200 years, off the back of 2008, one of the most worrying ones is that life expectancy has been going up. It's doubled in the last 200 years to an average of 82 years. It went backwards last year for the first time. So I think the full play out of austerity measures hasn't played yet, but again, if you take a long view, I'm optimistic. And so the way that I've been thinking about stuff for the last 20 years, really, I've got a degree in philosophy, which is largely useless 25 years ago, but now it seems to be more practical, is that if we think about the way that Maslow's hierarchy of needs works on a personal level, the distinction between your work life and your personal life makes no sense anymore to me. So in your home life, physiological needs, safety and security, love and belonging makes sense, and then we hope for confidence, self-esteem as we go higher up the hierarchy, and then at the top, self-actualization, where we're doing work, we're in relationships that help us be the best versions of ourselves and help us feel like we can give back and we can fulfill our destiny. And most people's jobs aren't really like that, but that's been a framework that I've been thinking about for the last 8 years in particular. So, Sebastian, have we got a chance to run the question? Is that going to work, do you think? Voice from the back in here. Anyone from Market Minds? Do we know if the question's going to work? Well, we'll do a show of hands. We'll do a low-tech show of hands based on that feedback. So just by a quick, actually this doesn't work by show of hands. I've realised the anonymity of this. But if you'd like to share this, you're not sat next to your boss right now, or anyone that's going to grass you up to HR. How many people feel highly engaged in their specific job today? Really? Right, okay. Back to that delusional or liar thing again, I think. So, look, that's amazing, actually, that response says probably 80%. There was a study by Gallup in 2013, and Gallup did a study of 225,000 people, 142 countries, and the answer was 13%. So maybe the anonymity drives that normative curve in a slightly different direction. And then, Harvard did a study 2 years ago, which was 12,000 white-collar workers, like people in this room, and found that it was less than 50%. So the trend is worrying, I think, and there are a lot of jobs that, quite frankly, don't allow people to feel highly engaged. You are obviously not in that cohort. So the 5 lessons, and if we think about trying to get high engagement as the objective in an organisation, because everything else is derivative of that, then the simple thing is that it is easy, genuinely. We don't think we've got any secret sauce or have done something that's that remarkably different to anybody else. And if you remember one slide from today, this is probably the one. I think the role of leadership, and I think of leadership broadly, by the way, individual leadership, not just the leaders of business. But this is more towards the seniority, is you have to set the strategy, hire great people, role model the values, and then get out of their way. And I'll talk a little bit in depth about this, but this is really the mantra that we think about in Simply Business today. To react to that fast-paced, ever-changing, complex world, you haven't got time to go through hierarchies anymore. So we think of this as the way that the businesses need to be designed. And there's a great quote. There's a writer called Dov Sedman that I absolutely love. I met him earlier in the year for my book, but he thinks about, in that interconnected world, the complexity of how we think about engaging with people has changed radically. That we've gone from an industrial economy where we hired hands to a knowledge economy where we hired heads to a global human economy now where we hire hearts. And again, if you think this sounds a little bit hippie-ish, which I've been accused of, I think from a pure economic point of view, if the one thing CEOs talk about relentlessly is the war for talent and the ability to get great people into their business. So if nothing else, I think the ability to hire hearts is the way that you can engage with people in a higher purpose than flogging insurance, quite frankly. If you really want to change the world and engage in communities in workplaces, then you're looking to engage with people's hearts rather than just their heads and their hands. The heads and hands are important as well. They need to bring them with their hearts, otherwise nothing gets done. But at the same time, I think that's the way to frame it. And I'll just give you a quick flavour of three of the roles, and as we design our organisation, and again, this is not perfect today, but this was something about 2 years ago, as I thought about the sort of onslaught of advanced technologies, and as a technology company, it's important that we want to implement them, so we hired a head of AI, and really it's a machine learning, someone who thinks about machine. So, can you hear me still? No. Can I get another mic, please? This battery seems to have gone. Cool. Try again. Just be 2 seconds. Chapter 3 is very good. If you want to flick over now and read to yourself. So crack and read that bit. There's 3 bits in it I have feedback on. One is the bit at the end where I dedicate something to my wife. So I've made 4 people cry already with that. So if you want to flick to that afterwards, that's something like that. Shall I try without the mic and see how we get on? Is that okay? I do. So, the 3 roles that we hired for are artificial intelligence, because we want to be at the vanguard of advanced technologies. And actually, we want to disintermediate jobs. We want to do away with a lot of jobs that are, quite frankly, dull, dirty, or dangerous. Not so much dangerous in an organisation, but they're the 3 things that people often think about. And then as we're designing those technologies, we hired a behavioural scientist from UCL, Dr. Keith there, is thinking about wherever there are human interactions, we want to design experiments that allow people for better outcomes. So that can be better outcomes for our customers, it can be better outcomes in terms of employee happiness. But it's an experimental approach, not just to the technologies, but also to the way that we think about organisational design. And then finally, we've had life coaching to our business. So we think as these technologies come online, as people's jobs are disrupted, we want to think about what that means for you individually, whether you're a 21-year-old in our contact centre or a 50-year-old at a different stage of the career like me. We want to make sure you're having that conversation about what makes your heart sing, what makes you think about the future that is going to come at us all faster. The second thing is genuinely think about giving away responsibility. When we talk about giving away responsibility, this is not, again, some sort of free-for-all in the organisation. We think about it as when we hire great people that want to be autonomous and make decisions, allow them to make decisions closest to the customer as possible in a risk-tolerant sort of way. I I've said this quite a lot, but I think management is a failure of leadership. If you don't set clear direction, if you don't set the tone for an organisation, then quite frankly, you have to do all the boring stuff of management, like setting objectives and managing people's time. And quite frankly, that's a waste of anyone's energy, I think. This is Herb Kellner, who started Southwest Airlines, and Herb Kellner was asked by a financial analyst, as his business scaled, did he worry about giving up control? And he answered, I never had it. And he said, if you create an organisation where people have to truly participate, then you don't need control. And again, he built an organisation, his biography is a great one, by the way, where, you know, Southwest has become one of the vanguard again of the best businesses in the airline industry. Okay, I can go. So this is a mic? No? Anyway, I keep going. If you got him, just flag and I'll try and speak up a bit. But the idea is that, you know, the last count, he was worth $2.5 billion, so I think it's gone pretty well for Herb Kellner. And I'll tell a quick anecdote. So this is about mindset in our organisation. Again, it's a true story. It's not in the book, but I think it's like bonus material. So I used to walk my kids up to school. Until I moved up to Manchester last year, I used to walk my kids up to school in London. And there was a 2-foot wall as we walked up the hill. And my kids used to jump up, 9 and 6-year-olds used to jump up on it, and every now and again, they would step in something they shouldn't, or they would fall off or scuff their shoes. But it was fine, right, because it was a 2-foot wall. And one day I was walking up, and one of the other parents, their kid got up, and she shouted, "Get down, you'll fall." And I remember in that moment thinking how remarkable in terms of mindset. Genuinely, I was thinking, all that kid's heard is it's going to fail, or the world is risky. And the analogy extends to the business, not in a patriarchal way, but in a way that I think about what you want to set up in your business is 2-foot walls, where people will jump up, try for themselves and experiment in that environment. And what you don't want is them to jump up on 10-foot walls all the time in environments where they'll fall. So that mindset and giving people the trust and autonomy is absolutely critical. And that brings us on to trust, because trust is really the only thing that leaders need to do in an organisation. You know, trust is a commodity that you build it so you can use it another time. Thanks very much. That is definitely a mic. It's definitely a mic. It's definitely a mic before, isn't it? I'm not making eye contact. No, these things happen at conferences, by the way. So I'll try. No, nothing again. Oh, that's a little bit. Yes. And that's my time up, unfortunately. You know, if you focus on building trust. If you focus on building trust in an organisation, it's a commodity you can draw on when you most need it. And you will need it because, you know, hopefully your business is going to grow, but there'll be ups and downs in that sort of curvilinear pattern as you get towards your growth. And again, there's a lot written on this. Daniel Pink wrote a great book called Drive. And you know this, the sort of jobs you do today, you know, human beings have an innate desire to be autonomous, self-determined and connected to one another. Work-life balance to me is one of the worst phrases in the human language. You know, the idea that work is something different from the rest of your life just doesn't make sense to me. So we're trying to create a human environment where people are connected to each other. And just a couple of examples of how we do that in Simply Business. There's loads of them. But again, to bring this into sort of tangible, and I'll rush through a couple of these. But one of my favourites is we stole this from Daimler a couple of years ago, whereby I put an out of office, and anyone that's emailed me will know that I put an out of office on and tell you that I literally do not see my emails while I'm on holiday. I delete the app off my phone, and when I get home, they're deleted. I don't look at them. If you need me, you can call me, but guess what? You're going to distract me from my kids and my wife, and so no one calls me. And that's fine, by the way. Life moves on and the world moves on. The other thing is we have sabbaticals. When people need a time to, you know, careers are long. You're probably going to work up until you're 80, most of you, if not further. So the fact is you've got to sustain yourself. Sorry, that was depressing, wasn't it? Bloke started crying down the front here. So I've just taken a 12-week sabbatical that's available to everyone in the business. And you've got to roll model. If you want this to be a long game for you, you've got to pace yourself through your career and make sure you're balancing your family with that as well. And there's a ton of stuff about remote working and flexible hours that I can talk to you in private, or come and see us, or look on the jobs page at Simply Business. The last couple, I'll just go through these quickly, is, you know, I talk a lot about giving stuff away, but as, you know, particularly for senior people, we talk about holding on to your burdens. So make sure you're not a lightning rod for stress. Make sure that there are decisions that you and only you can make. And a quick example was, in the first 6 months of me being in the job, Simply Business was a very different business. We had mortgages, we had lending products, and we got down to our last £20,000, where we had to have the conversation about, should we pay people next month? Which is never a great conversation to even be thinking about. But obviously that was not a conversation I'd go to the team and say, hey, what do you think about this, guys? Payment and optional. So again, there are certain decisions that you and only you should hold on to while you're giving a lot of this stuff away. And then the final thing is really about being authentic. And it's a massive thing today for me. I do think about the ability to bring 100% of yourself to work, and whatever that means in terms of diversity, in terms of the way you want to live your life. We genuinely think that we want a diverse spread of people in the business from whatever dimension and vector. My favourite opening to a presentation was one of our product managers. A couple of the guys will know this. And she introduced herself by saying, all you need to know about me is I role play an elf in the World of Warcraft. And I thought it was the best introduction to a presentation. I didn't understand the rest of the presentation after that, to be honest with you. But we want diversity in the organisation. But it does mean being self-aware. So, signals and the environment matter. We have a great office. There's open plan. People come and go as they please. At least half of the people of the 600 we have, I don't know where they are today, and I'm fine with that. But we do measure output and we measure productivity, but not in the way of classic objective setting. And also, it's about, I don't have an office. I don't even have a desk, actually. So, a couple of weeks ago, I had to work on top of a bin, which was probably taking it too far. But everyone in Simply Business will tell you, we come in every day and we find a seat to sit. And I think those signals are important. Equally, the signals about how you prioritise your family. So my sabbatical, my out of office, my kids' plays, how I make sure I leave work on time so I can spend the evenings with my children. And my wife, that's important as well. She'll hear me, I'll be in trouble for that. But the environment and the signals matter greatly. Unfortunately, what you end up is a standard uniform. So this is pretty much the uniform of everyone that works at Simply Business now, which is equally as unfortunate. And then also, we have the symbols about how you conduct yourself are really important. So we want to be informal, but we're very disciplined. We're very ambitious about our growth. But I often think about it doesn't end. So you've got to think about your perception. So I started my career many years ago. I've done some stuff on a keyboard. So I worked at Disney World, and I was a holiday rep. So I actually really love having a party. But everyone at Simply Business will tell you that I leave all parties about 9 o'clock. And the reason is really simple. I've worked really hard to build a business and values on an ethical basis. And the last thing I want people to see is me upside down behind a skip at 2 in the morning, because it will devalue that. So it's also really important that you think about your behaviour at all times. Whilst that informality is important, there are standards that you want to hold yourself to. Or as this photo, it might be that I leave just because I don't like people very much, which is probably somewhere between the truth. So that's the 5. And so there's a final bonus slide here. It gets a weird reaction, that one. I must admit, it's the and this is usually the one people remember. But I'm actually quite serious here. So I had the great privilege. The reason I was late this morning, I would have come up last night, is I had a dinner with the poet Lem Sisse last night, who I absolutely love. And we're talking about this stuff, that he had an amazing childhood, an amazing upbringing, that you should go and Google or read some of his work. But I do think about this, and I think about, I came from quite a humble working class single parent background, and I think about the long game, and I think about the sort of 120 year life that a lot of you will live. And I think about that level of engagement. So if people aren't doing what they want to do, what makes their hearts sing, then you should go and do something different, because life's long, there's no rehearsal. And there's a great book, or again, you can read the blog post on it if you want to read something else in the near term, like Reboot, by Bonnie Ware, she was a palliative care nurse, so she looked after people that were dying. And she wrote up all the notes of the people that she saw throughout her career. And it's called 5 Regrets of the Dying. And her number one regret by a long way was that, people said they wished they'd had the courage to live the life that was true to themselves and not the life others expect of them. So I realised that's a profoundly depressing way to finish a presentation. I was going to ask for a show of hands about who's living the life, but based on the fact that you're all super optimistic or you're charged up on caffeine, I'll probably get 100%. But I do think about this, and I love the business that we're building, because it's more than just about satisfying and delighting our customers. It's about building a community of people that are helping each other to be successful. The other peripheral benefit of this idea of 120-year life, just I was going to tell you this quick story. So, because of the stuff at Singularity University I started, I believe that genuinely that my generation would be the first to live to about 100 given the choices, and probably some of the younger ones in the audience 120. So I told my wife about this, and I said to her, look, I think we're going to live to 120. And she was like, no, I don't fancy it. 90 is good enough for me. And I might have been right or wrong, but my first reaction was, I'm going to be single again at 90. Which I got some fairly robust feedback from my wife about. That wasn't, as we contemplated her early death, that probably wasn't the right response. So look, I better shut up and get off. Thank you for your time. Genuinely, it's a privilege to be here. I'm delighted. 8 years ago, this conference wouldn't have happened. The reason I joined the industry is we couldn't fill a room, we couldn't fill a small toilet at that stage with people who are interested in this stuff. So I'm thrilled that there's so many great businesses thinking about solving customer problems in the right way and building cultures and businesses that are really exciting. So congratulations to Sebastian for convening, but congratulations to everyone here as well. It's brilliant to see so many people thinking about these issues. Read the book. I'd love to know what you think about it. Unless you think it's shit, in which case keep it to yourself. And I'm on all over Twitter and LinkedIn, so contact me if you've got some feedback or you want to discuss some of the topics. I'd love to hear from you. So I don't know if we've got time for questions. I don't know if there's anyone from Market Minds. We've got time for questions, or do you want to go straight to the panel? We've got time. Brilliant. So are there any questions right now? Anything that people want to ask or challenge me on straight away? Happy to take those now, or we can go to the panel. Yeah, great. Do you want a mic? Oh, let's not have a mic, shall we? Can you speak loudly and clearly, please? Brilliant. Thank you for that. That wasn't a planted question, but the question was about B Corp. And can you just by show of hands, do people know what B Corp is? So that's, yeah, probably about a third. So B Corp is it was an organisation built out of the States, and the idea is that the notion I talked about Milton Friedman of shareholder primacy over the last 15 years has worked pretty well, arguably up until 2008. And the challenge now is that as we think about finite resources on the planet, as we think about people wanting to be self-actualized, the idea is that business can only be really valued fully in its full social context. So shareholders are absolutely critical, and we need to create shareholder value because nothing else happens without them, quite frankly. And that's a serious and it's an important obligation. But there are other things that are important as well, like how you treat your employees, how you treat the environment, how you think of society at large. And we sort of know that. Most of us know that intuitively, and that's the sort of businesses that we want to work in. So B Corp, when we'd won the best companies twice, we thought, oh, should we enter again? And it was kind of like patting yourself on the back for a job well done. It was great, by the way, and we loved it. But we're like, actually, it's just telling yourself you're good, or so how do we challenge ourselves to do something that's really meaningful? And B Corp's hard. There's a set of criteria that are independently audited, and then you put yourself through the criteria, and it's about how you score on a sliding scale on all of these different issues: environment, social, governance, etc. And so the bar's hard. So we entered it and we got accredited the first year. But the wonderful thing about it is that you don't stop because you never get a perfect score. So it shows you where you're weak or poor, and so you can develop your business around those lines. But the simple principle is that, the businesses that are running that way, I believe, have great shareholder returns anyway. You can sort of put aside the philosophical bit about human flourishing and happiness and desire to work in businesses that are doing that if you want, which I don't want to. But actually, if nothing else, I think that it'll generate longer-term greater returns. And also, it's the sort of businesses people want to work in. So B Corp is, I'd really love you all to take a look at it. If you're running businesses or starting businesses, it's actually easy to get involved when you're earlier on, because obviously you can design your organisation around it. But I do think it's a model for capitalism. It's a model that thinks more broadly, but it doesn't take away the need for shareholders to be important, and that people miss that a lot of the time. They think it's sort of freewheeling, freeloading sort of environment where people come and go as they please. But it's really about balancing shareholders with other important issues, and it just makes sense. We live on a finite planet, so resources aren't endless. And unless you think about mining asteroids to go to the next thing, I think we could do a better job here first. So thanks for that question. Go ahead. I should just email you the business plan, shouldn't it be easy? There's a lot in there. Yeah, so the question was what we've been doing since we got bought by Travelers. So more of the same, to be honest. Travelers bought us because they believed in the long-term vision. They believe in the culture. The CEO, Alan Schnitzer, is an amazing man, new CEO in a 30,000-person organisation. And they realised that what's made them successful for 160 years has got to change for them to be around in another 160 years. So we're a bit of an experiment. They get the digital transformation stuff that we do. And we're doing more of the same. So we've got this huge aspiration in the UK. We're at the start of that journey. There's tons of things we want to do better. We just won the Compare the Market deal, which is a great growth story for us in the UK. But there's a bunch of new product guys in the organisation that are looking at new markets, new innovations around how our customers want to be better served as well. And the US is new. So, we're just coming out of stealth mode there, and we've got a lot of infrastructure that we want to build. But it's a $50 billion market. No one's close to what we're doing today, I don't think, there. And I think we'll be hugely successful there. But that's a long game. The wonderful thing about having an institutional investor like Travelers is that we're thinking about the next 20 and 30 years now, rather than private equity, which is important and serves its purpose, but it's a shorter cycle there. So we're really thinking about how we dominate in the space that we're in, but in the same way, we want to make sure we do it with the cultural values and norms that we're creating as well. So can I just take one quick question? This lady had her hand up. I'll answer it quickly. So the question was about how we maintain our culture. So no, look, it wasn't an economic deal for me. So this is my life's work now, and so for me, we always knew we'd made money, would do well at that at some point, and we had historically, we would again. So it's really about how we could find a partner where there was enough of a challenge for us internally in their culture. How can we help people think about transforming a 160-year-old business? And they do so many things well, by the way. I'm humbled by similar values to us, similar culture, surprisingly, just a different scale and different type of operating model. But there's so many similarities that I was profoundly surprised when I met Alan over dinner 18 months ago, just how similar we thought about the world, but just operating at different ends of scale. So that was the first thing, a surprising amount of crossover on the Venn diagram about things that are important to us, but different challenges with technology. So they leave us alone, quite frankly. So we're trying to leverage the best of travellers in terms of their scale, their knowledge, their capital, their know-how, and the best things about their culture, and vice versa, really. They're looking at us, and I sit on the operating committee of Travellers now as well, so I have some influence and conversations of Travellers, and I'm sat at the table thinking about these things. But it's like a really good partnership, which we were humbled by, quite frankly, because I was a bit arrogant early on in my. I thought they were the big sort of demonic, incumbent, and actually they've just got the same problems we have at a different scale. So we love being part of Travellers. They're a values-led organisation. They wouldn't have, and they've innovated a number of times over the last 160 years. I think they're in a different period now, and we're hopeful that we can be part of that transformation. But overall, they leave our culture alone. We're respectful of each other. We leverage them, they leverage us, and over time, we'll hopefully they'll gain some momentum. So far, so good. And genuinely, we didn't do the deal because it was economic. Our shareholders wanted it. We did it because we felt like it was a good home for us, and it could help us think long-term about our aspirations to be a global business, focused on customers, and focused about building a business where people want to work. Thank you. Anyway, thanks for your time, everyone. I'll be around for a few hours. So.